OpsTok, Thought Leadership and Technology in Operations, with your hosts Sahand and Tom. Special guest, Marcus Strother, Talent Specialist in Supply Chain, Engineering, Technology and Manufacturing, President of Bridgeway Commerce Group.
I actually know Marcus for over 7 years now, and I met him when I was at crossroads in my career, and he helped me land the dream job and helped me set up for my success now, having my own business. And what sets apart Marcus from other recruiters, other people in the talent business, is that Marcus actually has a knack and a talent for supply chain and manufacturing professionals. So I can tell you, it was the only interview in my life and the only recruiter that I met, and one of the first questions he asked me is, what's the probability of rolling snake eyes twice in a row? And ever since then, the relationship started being both analytical guys that understand the engineering, manufacturing, supply chain business. So with that introduction, Marcus, welcome to the show. And please tell us a little bit about where you're at, your company, and what got you into supply chain manufacturing recruiting.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Great to be here. Bridgeway Commerce Group, we're based in suburban Houston, Texas, but we cover not only Houston and other parts of Texas, but throughout the whole country as well. Our niche or specialty is kind of partnering with manufacturers to kind of bring some good talent to their team to give them really a competitive advantage over others. Our niche is more refined into supply chain, manufacturing operation roles as well. And then for other supportive roles, we will also even partner with other expert recruiters to help us find some good talent. So that's the key to it, is find good talent as quickly as we can to help people get that edge or jump over their competition.
Did you say, Marcus, with the whole great resignation, the COVID, and a lot of people rethinking their careers, has that job gotten, like, what has the last 2 years looked like? I mean, has it gotten tougher in the job market? What are their reactions? Like, what's happening?
I want to break it up because COVID was a different era, or at least in my industry in tech. And then just this year has been an epoch on its own. So I'd love to get your thoughts through the 2 years or the year of COVID, and this year in particular too, with recession and inflation kind of hitting us.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting to say the least. But I also think it's given people a lot of reasons to think smarter about things. Go through their talent evaluation. You know, do they have some people that are really more dead weight than not? Are they really producing? And then there's silver linings that are just there for the taking for a lot of people. But sometimes you have to go find those silver linings. You have to be willing to have the right attitude to go for it. But it has led to a little bit of the survival of the fittest, obviously. We're seeing some consolidations, some mergers. I'm seeing some companies that are maybe consolidating other divisions into one more central location, because we've all had to get leaner and meaner to survive and thrive until we get through this storm. We will get through it. Everything's cyclical. A lot of good signs that companies are coming out of it already, or others are about to. So, yes, it's been challenging, but I think the key to it is you got to have the right talent in place and the right tools to supplement that talent, to make, to create greater efficiencies, and where you can do more with less. And so those that are going to be better at implementing those things will be the ones that I think have a better chance of succeeding moving forward.
And in terms of the positions that you see, or you mentioned tools and the companies that, I don't want to use the word, but innovate or do things a bit differently or more efficiently. Do you see a trend in your line of work that, hey, there are more positions open and harder to fill than some of the positions that were traditionally the open positions that you had you witnessed over the years.
Oh, absolutely. The only thing constant is change, right? And
Right.
even in my industry, the recruiting world, it's radically different than even 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago. And where it's going to be 5-10 years from now will be radically different than it is today. What is driving that change, I think, is a lot of innovation. And that does mean the integration of AI, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and other tools like that. And so people that are recognizing that, how do they now go out and find that talent? Because it's new talent.
How do you see that technology impacting careers in the manufacturing supply chain industry, Marcus?
It's going to impact it greatly, I believe. And so I really think the jury may be out on it, to be determined. But necessity is the mother of all invention, they say. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And I think it's economies of scale that come into play. A lot of things that are coming into play. Maybe the older traditional ways of doing things are being challenged in many ways. And so there's some resistance that you're seeing in the workplace, even with hiring managers, even at the C-suite level. They may recognize, yes, we need to do a better job of competing, but how we're going to do it, and there may be some resistance in them really making that transition. But if they don't do it, they'll be left behind ultimately. So they have to be willing to adopt new changes, not be fearful of it. And that may be sometimes they have to relinquish some of their authority and bring some people in-house that they can assign with the task of helping make those changes occur.
I'm just thinking about what you were saying, Marcus, about that, sometimes it's relinquishing the authority. I'm going to speculate because I've heard this sometimes, especially when it comes to tech, it's also a matter of, bad experiences, like overpromised and underdelivered by the time an initiative was done. You're smiling, so, you've heard of it. And some of it might be, I blame people like me from the tech industry, coming in with some lofty solutions that are promising to change the way you run your business. And a lot of times they do, and it's amazing. That's why I'm in the business. But many times, I don't want to give a percentage to it, but many times it's just overpromising or missing the mark. It's a great solution, but it just is not really what's needed, or it has some deficiencies that are, it's just not hitting the low-hanging fruit. Maybe, maybe in 10 years they'll be ready for this kind of a solution, but right now there's, they have a different battle to fight. You talk to executives in this sector day in, day out. What do you hear about this kind of stuff? Is it really being, labor resistance to tech? Is it how would you rank it? Is it relinquishing authority? Is it saving face that, we've done it this way, so we got to do it? Or some of it is, to blame the techies like me, right? Like they're just not hitting the mark. Be honest. It's, I'm here to learn. It really comes down to, I think, the mindset of the leaders of the team, of the organization, and just their people, right? So some are going to be more welcoming for it. Others are going to be more resistant. And there's going to be maybe that little happy medium. I think it's going to have to come in baby steps a little bit. We didn't go from horse and buggy to automobile overnight. Right.
We didn't go from trains as a mode of transportation to commercial aviation overnight. It takes some time and a lot of, mistakes and errors that happen along the way. I mean, that's really commonplace. I am seeing a lot of other companies on the techie side trying to take advantage of this opportunity. I would say to any person looking at considering adding any tech tools to their suite, be careful, do your diligence, because I mean, we've experienced it firsthand ourselves by adding some new tools. It was trial and error. We purposefully oversubscribed to competitors to see which one would work. And we discovered a lot of them, I mean, they talk a good game, but they had coding errors that did not produce the results that they claimed. And so we brought that to their attention, and ultimately we had to not renew those contracts and find other resources that work. So there's going to be some of that. But if you're a CEO or a CFO, COO, you got to be thinking, how many times can I strike out on getting it wrong? So I think some of them may be slow to adapt for some of those reasons. So again, survival of the fittest. There's going to be that cream that will rise to the top eventually, and there's going to be some companies, as they're all competing in this era of transitioning that we're going through, that will, I think, stand out from the crowd. There's going to be winners and losers, and I think it's a kind of a long game approach, but that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's great.
That's kind of a broad overview of where I see things currently.
No, that's awesome. By the way, this is the whole point of having this conversation. It's just that the nuances, the examples is really phenomenal, because that's what you get by talking to somebody like you and Tom and hopefully myself in some areas, rather than reading and you mentioned AI, an AI generated article, or maybe not AI generated, but a thin article online, right? So this is very valuable. So thank you for the nuance and the context there.
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely are living in exciting times from a technology standpoint. It's really changing the game, and it's really interesting. So manufacturing and supply chain, gets a lot of attention in the media, especially as we're seeing a lot more manufacturing kind of reshoring, nearshoring. So there's definitely a lot more buzz about the industry. What advice would you give, or from your experience, what do prospective employees do well that helps them find that dream job, or what are the mistakes to avoid? Like, what would you recommend if somebody is trying to get in the industry or trying to find a new home inside the industry they're already in? What would you recommend to those people looking for those jobs?
Yeah, of course, that may depend on where they're at in their career if they have not yet even started it. The way I would approach it is, look, find a good university or a community college that may specialize in supply chain or related to that. Here in Houston, we have University of Houston has a tremendous supply chain school, and then there's also some awesome community colleges here that will do the same things. They'll even work in participation with the university, so the credits will transfer and apply. And so that would be one thing. I would also encourage people that are looking to get into it, talk to others that are in it. And the universities are great, but also they can connect them with maybe subject matter experts as well. But now those that are kind of already in the supply chain space within manufacturing, they've got to stay ahead with the knowledge and the changes. So I know that hiring managers, because I talk with hiring managers all the time, what are you looking for? And of course, they're going to get a lot of candidates, a lot of resumes to read, but they're looking for things that make those candidates stand out from the crowd. And those that really show that they take the career seriously will stand out. And how do you go about doing that? Well, are they involved in associations and organizations within supply chain and manufacturing, both locally, maybe even regionally or nationally? Are they pursuing any certifications? Are they about continuing education? That's important. Are they looking at going from maybe a bachelor's to a master's? And just really show that they're serious about it. They're making a commitment. They need to be willing to use both ears and the one mouth patiently or sparingly, and and be willing to show to the mentors that, you know, they want to learn and advance and be a contributor, and not come across as what's in it for me, but rather how can I help you? That gets people's attention. And then if they're more advanced in their career, you know, great. You still need to always be trying to learn and always be trying to help those others, service to others, and just be willing to share what you know. Everything I've learned because somebody was willing to share what they knew with me. And so that's what I would say. I know, again, that's probably a long-winded, broad answer, but it just depends on what people are in the stage of their life and their career is what they need to be doing to stay focused on it.
That is awesome. And Marcus, let me just zero in on two things you mentioned that are just at any stage is just such valuable things to say, such valuable advice, and it does stand out. You know, what can I do for you rather than what's in it for me?
Yep.
Huge.
Yep.
And that mentality is just rare to find. And you know, when you find folks like that, you know, better as employers, better hang on to them tight, because it's just, you know, it's really a lot rarer than the general. So you do want to stand out that way. And the other thing you mentioned, which is, you know, paying it forward, right? Sharing, connecting. And, you know, I just quickly sharing one story the other day on LinkedIn, somebody who's, he still, I think, calls himself a junior developer, which I don't think he should anymore, because he's, you know, it's amazing. And he just posted a note about holding coffee chats for people who are looking for jobs in software development to come and talk to him. And you know, this is a gentleman that like 6 months ago was doing the same thing on the other side of it, trying to get into the industry, right? And I was like, this is just phenomenal that you're doing this. You know, kudos to you. And so anyway, that's huge too. It does stand out because, again, most people don't do it. You hunker down, and sometimes it's a matter of just not being proactive about it. Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. And unfortunately, in some cases, it's like, you know, what's in it for me? I'm not sharing. I paid my dues to get here. You go figure it out yourself too. So it's definitely the growth mindset that you described is fantastic. Great advice for anybody, even, you know, even towards the end of your career. I think by the end, most people kind of know and, you know, do help, but in early, mid, late, doesn't matter. You can always help others and you know, stand above and beyond the crowd.
Well, I think it's even human nature. We want to pass it on.
Yeah.
You know, you see that in life all the time. So many restaurants have become successful because why? They had the recipes passed on to them by one of their parents, who had it passed on to them by one of their parents, so it can be generational. But people just, I think we're kind of by design hardwired to want to pay it forward and pass it on, because remember, we have people do that for us as well.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I think all of us can remember specific mentors, specific bosses, and certain thing they said to us in the moment, and that stays with you for your whole career, for your whole lifetime.
Oh yes.
So it's just you know, really, really incredible to then have the opportunity to pay it forward, right? Like how many times I've repeated my past bosses with the wisdom that they shared and given to my employees. So it really is, you know, probably the most rewarding part of a career in my mind is that mentorship.
Yep.
So kind of you know, let's talk a little bit more about the supply chain industry and manufacturing. So I know, Marcus, you mentioned that you also work with a variety of recruiters in other industries also. How do you see our particular industry versus maybe like some of the other industries, like more the professional services or financials? Like how do you see supply chain and manufacturing going into 2023?
Yeah, interesting. It's really challenging for some and rewarding for others, because as we the prediction is by the experts that we're likely heading into a recession. Some people say, no, we've already been in one, but regardless, we know it's a challenging economy. It could get better, could get worse. In typical recessionary periods, it does impact certain industries. The ones, hospitality for one, that you'll see that put pressures on them, but our other industries may tend to thrive. We all still need to eat. We're all still going to need medical attention. Okay, so if you're manufacturing for, let's say, medical devices, your industry might be doing just quite well. So it's almost recessionary proof. So certain industries, transportation is one. We still need to find ways to get around to go from point A to point B. But industries that are more recreational purposes, they may see a decline. And so they may need to be thinking, is there any other things that they can use? Same equipment, same tooling, same machinery, same personnel, same software, but maybe add additional product or service to maintain their viability. So, but yeah, there will be some winners and losers, but it's, again, this too shall pass.
And I think you bring up an interesting point, and honestly, it never really clicked until you just said it, but you're right. You could be a supply chain manufacturing career professional, and then because you're working for these manufacturers, depending on which industry is up or down, that you could find a home. And actually, when you say this, like I remember my own personal experiences. I was working in the oil and gas industry, and oil and gas was just coming off a huge peak and crashing really hard. Gas prices were down a lot. And then I transitioned from the oil and gas industry to the automotive industry, and the automotive industry producing cars was going through the roof because gas prices were down and people were buying SUVs and big cars. So I actually experienced that myself. So it's very interesting proposition for people in supply chain manufacturing, that depending on the economic cycle, you might actually be able to find a home in the industry that's thriving at the time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Biggest example I can share on that too is in 2009, while the whole world was melting, and it was melting, unfortunately, for quite a few people, in tech, in the mobile and social and sort of the Ubers of the world, that tech was on a tear. So we haven't, up until recently, we have not had better time. The .com era was a different beast, but this was you could, as a professional in the software industry, you probably haven't had a better 10-15 years up until this year, right? So it just changes. Now again, we see manufacturing is an industry that still needs software, still needs modernization, needs access to data. So we do a lot of work there, but a lot of our traditional side of as a business, traditional side of our innovation startups or VC funded startups are a lot more conservative because the funding has kind of gone away a little bit, first due to the war, in Ukraine, and then, the macroeconomic interest rates going up and all that, right? So, and even in that industry, even in the funded, innovations industry, there's still quite a bit of funding and activity happening. It's just contracted a little bit, but, certainly, rebalancing your portfolio of clients is great advice to kind of think through, hey, how can we reuse the same skills, tools, people, but maybe have an additional industry that you service or something that's going to survive the current conditions, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to be successful when everybody's experiencing boom times. But when you go through challenges, it's best to look at that as opportunities. And look in the mirror and just see what can we do more efficiently, do it smarter, do it better, and to be more competitive. And allow yourself to think outside the box, or even imagine a world where there is no box. Take it to an even higher level, and be willing to explore some things that you may not have ever thought about before. With all the reshoring and onshoring that's coming on, the nearshoring, as they talk about, that's great. That will, I think, ultimately lead to some paradigm shifts in the way things are done, the way the different suppliers get the product to the manufacturers who get it out to the end user. There may be opportunities for greater partnering. I think companies need to realize what part of our business model is taking 40 hours a week, 2 shifts or 3 shifts, versus trying to keep it all in-house and costing us a lot of money, but we may not use that often. Okay, great. Why not outsource some of that instead? And now you got more savings and revenue to reinvest in your people and other things. Again, it goes back, scales of efficiencies and things like that. And so I think you're going to see ultimately a lot of good things come from this challenging times. But unfortunately, there will be some losers, but there will be winners. There'll be companies that don't even exist yet, that 5 years, 10 years from now will be household names. We've seen that throughout our history. That will happen again. And some of those may even impact the way we live our lives today. And a lot of that will be, I think, driven by the advancing of technology. So it's really exciting times when you look at it from that perspective.
It really is. And I think that, technology is one of those things that is moving so fast right now, and it might get some headlines, but if you really invest the time in getting to understand it and use it, it can really take you very far. And I think especially when we talk about manufacturing and supply chain, because I know in my experience, a lot of times in manufacturing, especially if you've been a business that's stayed in the United States through all the offshoring efforts, it means that what you're creating is something really unique, very specific niche. It's something that can't be easily replicated somewhere else. So that creates that uniqueness for you. But at the same time, it's also sometimes a hindrance towards embracing new technology, because hey, we've been doing this the same way over and over. Right. But as technology gets better, more competitiveness, somebody can maybe finally catch up to where you're at. So I do find that the technology is really interesting, especially in our supply chain and manufacturing space, because it's a big opportunity, but I think it's also a threat for your competitors if they all of a sudden apply this technology and put it in. I mean, I know companies that still do everything pen and paper, and
yes,
our army of people with pen and paper, and it's that's one, it's very expensive, it's very inefficient, and then at some point that does translate into a worse customer experience for your customers. Because if your competitor, for example, has a easy to access app and they can look up all their information, but if you're still doing pen and paper, somebody has to call the office, somebody has to dig up the paper. So I think that there's some things that maybe are hard to quantify, but the technology can set companies apart for sure.
Well, and also I think the leaders of manufacturers, they need to be willing to question all the assumptions. Historically, what has been successful for companies is to outsource it all overseas because we can make it cheaper. Right. And look at the sales go up. Okay, great. What are the attitudes today? My own personal experience, I don't think I'm alone. I'm more than willing to pay a little bit more to know where it's made and the quality that it's made, and know that I'm supporting, my local businesses and economies. So they have to be willing to question, I think, some of the assumptions as well. And they're finding out, as there's some of them already doing that, when they do put it to pencil, that they're ultimately saving money and having better profit margins by reshoring or nearshoring, actually, because it costs less money to move it from state to state than from country to country and overseas halfway around the world to here. Everything's going up.
Right.
Freight costs are going through the roof. What about when ships have to just be stuck offshore, can't even come in and unload? So those are things that can just be eliminated. You want to minimize the obstacles of getting your product to the end user. The more seamless, cost-efficient way to do it is better. So I think we're going through an era where people need to really question a lot of assumptions and the attitude of, well, that's what you've always done it. How's that working for you?
Absolutely.
And that goes to talent, that goes to getting the right talent. And in supply chain, if you're looking at adding new talent to your team, if they're not tech savvy, I don't know how much use they're going to add. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
And I think, to go off that, me personally, my opinion was always when, the whole reshoring conversation started to get a lot of buzz in the media, is honestly, the physical challenges make sense, right? Like, it's cheaper than shipping by boat. It's better. You have to hold less inventory. With interest rates going up, it's even more important. So all the physical financials make sense. But honestly, I think the biggest challenge, and this is an area that, Marcus, you could speak to, I think my biggest challenge and fear of all these reshoring efforts is the talent. Like, how are we going to find the professionals to be able to fill those roles? And so what do you think, Marcus? Like, if you're a company and you're looking at reshoring, like, what are the things you can do now to build that pipeline of people? Like, what are, like, how do we fill all these jobs? How do we bring these factories back? How do you get that talent?
Yeah, boy, I wish there was a magic wand or a quick solution to all of that. Look, we kind of did this to ourselves. 80s and 90s, look how much manufacturing we sent off short. A generation to 2 generations. That skill, we talked earlier about passing things on. We skipped 1 to 2 generations. So we have to be willing to commit to retraining and to incentivize it, to make it appealing. Degrees are awesome. Look, when I'm going to have someone operate on my heart or brain, hope I don't ever need that, but if I do, I really hope they went to a top flight school, have a fancy degree to go with that, and a lot of expert training and knowledge and skills. But when it comes to manufacturing some things, I don't know what value some of those traditional degrees may offer. Helpful, but we hear it all the time. Maybe these trade schools, white collar versus blue collar. I think in recessionary periods, you may see a strain on the white collar jobs and a boom to the blue collar jobs, because as we bear down to essentials that we need in life, regardless of the economy, a lot of it is things have to be made. And that means more blue collar jobs. So I think we need to get more, make it more popular for trade schools. When I was going through school, it was common to have shop classes and things like that. And a lot of times those teachers were, from those industries, and they would kind of volunteer their time or maybe get a little bit of money, not much, but they weren't maybe the full-time teacher. But they would come in and kind of pass it on to future generations. We need to get back to more of that. It's not going to happen overnight. I know that there's been hundreds of thousands of jobs, that have been created already through this initiative, but there needs to be millions more. And I think that in time it will come. So I think, again, some paradigm shifts need to occur on the mindset of how do we tackle this solution long term, and with the goal of let's never get caught in this situation again.
I know we're getting towards the end of our time. So first, I just want to say thank you, Marcus, for joining us today on OpsTok. And it's been
Absolutely.
really insightful. Any final thoughts, Sahand? Any final questions before we send off?
Just absolutely. Marcus, pleasure meeting you. Just before we part ways, though, I wanted to make sure that I asked you if Tom and I and our audience, how can we be of help and service? What should we think of when, we're thinking, Marcus and Bridgeway? Where can we find you? So all of those and any parting words of wisdom you can leave with us before we say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. They can always call me on my direct number, 832-761-5844. They can always email me, Marcus at bridgewaycommerce.com. They can go to our website, bridgewaycommerce.com. We're easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn as well. They should be able to find us, I think, pretty easily. And would love to hear from them and see what we can do to help them as well. And we are more relational, not transactional. So we really thrive on that personal touch and creating and fostering long-term relationships. That's what we think it's all about. And all these things topically we've discussed, if I may add, it really doesn't boil down to, wow, we've got the coolest name for a company. Our building is awesome. Look at the signage. Isn't it amazing? That's well and good, but it takes people.
That's right.
You've got to get the right talent and provide them with the right tools and resources as well. So and we can help them with the talent. We can't really help them with the tools and resources. We'll leave that up to you all to help with that. So, but be awesome and be very happy to partner with you all as well.
Amazing.
Thank you again so much, Marcus. We really appreciate it. Great conversation today, and we look forward to getting feedback from the audience. Please comment below, and have a great day.
All right. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Fantastic to meet you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.